welcome to all of you, and welcome to MEM for the today FDP session. Just a small brief, we want to introduce about Professor Anita Pirasni ma'am to our participant. So Professor Anita ma'am is a director of she is a director, staff training and research institute of distance education at Indira Gandhi National Open University, New Delhi. She is also a program director of Malviya Mission Teacher Training Program at IGNOU. Professor Pirasni has been working in the area of open and distance learning, adult education, skill development, lifelong learning since 1987. She has been a visiting professor at Institute of Pedagogy, Julius Maximilian University, Germany, and also at the Open University at UK. Professor Pirasni has been a team leader for international program and project, including UNESCO and Commonwealth of Learning. And she has been trained at the International Literacy Institute. Professor Pirasni also a chief editor of Indian Journal of Open Learning, which is running under the IGNOU. A warm welcome, ma'am, to this session, and it's over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and namaskar to all the participants. Thank you very much for inviting me for this session, and I hope that we will have an interactive session. Would you prefer if I speak in English, or should I do Hindi and English mixed?
As per your wish, ma'am, no problem. Maximum participants are from the north and east region, so they know Hindi English both.
Okay, fine. So I will talk in English and Hindi. जब भी आपको लगता है कि मुझे रोकना है, पूछना है कुछ, तो please feel free to stop and we will take it up again. So today we are talking about a topic, an area which is being talked about a lot in higher education, and it is related to outcome-based education. And also we are trying to see what is it that is happening post 2020. And before I even go on to talk about my topic, I just want you to think about a couple of things that I have written here. Why is it that the NEP-2020 in its opening pages makes some very categorical and direct statements? For instance, it says that students have not yet attained foundational literacy and numeracy.
Recording in progress.
It also says that the in-school, students who are in school and the assessment processes of children in school have become routine. And as a result, the focus is on memory. Focus is not on competencies. And another report, which is taken out by the NGO Pratham, also says that their analysis shows that students who are of a higher grade, higher class level, are demonstrating competencies of a lower class level, which means that if you are in class 8, you are actually demonstrating competencies of class 5. Similarly, there is across subjects, maths, English, writing, all these, there is a disparity in the learning levels vis-a-vis the actual situation on the ground. And therefore, when we come to higher education, the National Education Policy also points out that there is a major problem that is being faced, and that there are low standards of undergraduate education. All of us are working in higher education, so this is a matter of concern for us. It is not just the National Education Policy, but subsequent to the National Education Policy, when the All India Survey of Higher Education took place in 2021, even there it was seen, and these are figures which are from the survey report, so you can see them, you can read the survey report, it is available. There also it is seen that level-wise, when you see the outturn, that is when you see the result, you find that there is a huge gap in what is coming in and what is being the final result. So you have a level-wise outcome. You find only 16.5% in the postgraduate level are passing out. Similarly, when you look at something like PhD, which is a requirement for those who are going into the world of work, especially entering into higher education. Even there, it is only 0.3%, except for humanity, for undergraduate level, where even there it is only 7.2%. It is not a figure which is very, very positive or satisfactory. In terms of discipline, also, the outturn is not satisfactory, because you will see that disciplines which are very much valued, management, computer science, all these are also showing a very low level outcome, and these figures are from the report itself. So again, you have in arts you have 31.3, but overall there is a problem. And because of this, when you go back to the national education policy, you find that the policy talks about a number of challenges. And those challenges, if you have to go to quality education, then those challenges have to be addressed. And today, when we are discussing outcome based education, we will in this session try to first understand these challenges in with respect to outcome based education. What is outcome based education? What are learning outcomes? Why is the national education policy talking about the learning outcomes? And then see how, as teachers, how are they reflected in our courses, in our programs, vis-a-vis our courses, and also what is it that we can do to improve learning outcomes through our teaching learning processes. Again, when we are looking at the national education policy, the policy says that it aims to achieve the goals of Sustainable Goal 4, which is the goal for education, and the entire focus of the policy is on the aspirational goals of the 21st century. You will appreciate that the 21st century is quite different from all previous centuries. Whatever happened in the 18th, 19th century, the pace at which changes are taking place in the 20th century is humongous. And as a result, there is a lot of changes that we ourselves have to make with respect to teaching, with respect to our own learning as teachers, so that we are able to meet these aspirational goals of the 21st century and translate them into our classrooms. I think my slide is not okay. I think this is better now. So, in terms of the changes that are required to be made, the policy says that there will have to be changes, and those changes will include the revision and the revamping of all aspects of education. So whether it is formation of policies, whether it is formation of directions, whether there is formulation of regulations, and so on, there has to be a new look which has to come into place, so that the directions of the policy are brought to the ground level. In doing so, the policy specifically points out, and this is a matter that policy is, this is a direct citation from the policy, where the policy is acknowledging that there is a gap between the present state of learning outcomes and what is required. The policy tries to attempt saying that this gap must be bridged. How should it be bridged? By undertaking major reforms. Why should these reforms be taken up? They should be taken up so that they bring about the highest quality change in the quality, equity, and integrity of the system. And at what levels should these changes be brought about? At all levels. From the bottom, which is early childhood and care, right up till the top, which is higher education and PhD level. So this continuum of change, not just in one segment of the education, but throughout the policy. And I would also like to point out that this is the first policy where you find that the lowest level, which used to be primary education, has now gone down to the Anganwadi and the Balwadi workers also. So, and that segment is to be met through programs of early childhood care and education. So, from those programs right up to the PhD level, there has to be change which has to come in so that this gap between the learning outcomes is bridged. Also, the focus of education has to be changed from not just knowledge, but the fact that it must also include skilling. There is a lot of emphasis in the area of skilling to ensure that the gap between education and employment is bridged, that those who come out of the portals of higher education are also equipped with professional and employable skills. In terms of values, also, the policy is conscious of the fact that being a good citizen, being a good human being is important. And that is why this policy talks about not just knowledge, but knowledge, skills, and values in the same line. And another aspect which is important is that the graduates of education should be able to function as global citizens, which means that the realization that today the world is interconnected, that there is that sitting in a village in India, you can still have a global presence, and therefore the need to understand to be a global citizen. How do education systems equip their graduates to be global citizens is also one of the visions of the policy. Again, talking about globalization and internationalization, the need to realize that our outcomes should be such that they are in sync with those that are mandated by the Sustainable Development Goals and by the education agenda. And the date for, or rather the year for the achievement of the agenda is 2030, which is only 4 years away. So we are on a fast track mode to be able to achieve these commitments by the country. Having said that, I come to the major topic of the day, which is outcome based learning. And here I would like to show you first the thought process by which outcome based learning is not just something that is standing alone. It is part of a larger learning plan. We will discuss outcome based learning also in detail, but first thing is to understand that it is not standing in a vacuum, nor is it standing alone. It is a process, and that is linked to our entire education system. If you will see in this learning plan, every institution has a mission. This mission is derived from a policy or a regulation which is prepared. So the mission of your college or your university is derived from now the National Education Policy 2020. The reason why these programs are taking place, which are being done by MIT and by Ranchi, are because the need of the hour is to sensitize teachers towards the directives of the National Education Policy. Your institutional mission is also part of that deriving itself from the policy. From the mission, we set our institutional goals. Every goal is also reflected in objectives framed by your department, by your school, by your center, because we are the implementing agency for carrying out our institutional mission and goals. Based upon the objectives, we measure the outcomes. Yes, there is a measurement method by which the outcomes are measured, and that the measurements or measurement of outcomes leads to an assessment criteria to see have we achieved it or not achieved it. That is reflected in the results when they are analyzed as to what has happened. The results, depending on what the results have been, how much has been achieved. Like I showed you in the previous couple of slides, that the All India survey says that there is only this many percent who have been able to, the outturn is maybe 74% or 20%. So here are the results. The analysis of these results will enable us to take action to ensure that the places where there were gaps, the places where the outcome was not satisfactory, should be improved, and some actionable areas should come forward so that next time when the program is rolled out, then these improvements are already embedded in the program. And in the next cycle which takes place, from the objectives to the outcomes to the measurements and so on, every cycle, whether it is an annual cycle or a biannual cycle, every cycle must show that the action taken has resulted in the outcomes and the program improvements. I hope that is clear to everybody, that it is not something that is happening alone, it is happening in a systemic kind of a manner. So here are some other slides just to show you that everything is interconnected. Outcomes are not standing on their own, they are connected to. So some sort of conversation. Yeah, I don't know, sir, whether it is, are they allowed to unmute themselves in the session?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. They can.
Thank you so much. So since you're allowed to unmute yourself, then I'd like to know from you just a quick thing, that in your opinion, what is the difference between learning objectives and learning outcomes? Anybody can unmute themselves and we can have a small, quick response from you. Do you think that there is any difference between learning objectives and
yes, ma'am.
Outcomes? Yes, sir, please.
Very much difference between objective and
Wonderful.
outcome.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Lovely.
Objective is planning, and outcome means what changes happens in the student.
Okay, thank you. Very good. Thank you so much. Anyone else wants to add to that or make it elaborate on it a little bit?
No, actually, his point is correct. I agree with you, sir.
Yes, sir. You agree with him. So, Chandra Yadav ji, thank you so much for your response, which it seems that everybody is agreeing with what it is. So, that makes my task a little more easier. So, when we're talking about goals, we're talking about the broad statements that we want to accomplish. But when we are talking about objectives, we are talking about those aspects, those skills, those values and attitudes that the learner is that are prepared, so that a teacher can have a vision as to what a clear pathway as to what she or he wants to accomplish. Objectives are always from the teacher's point of view. They are those statements which help the teacher organize her lesson plan, organize the kind of content which will go into her classroom. Objectives also help the teacher in identifying what kind of learning resources she will use to take forward the class. Learning objectives are also importantly linked to measurement, and based upon the selection of the content and the learning experiences, along with what has been taught in the classroom and the materials that have been shared, the assessment of the learners would take place to see how they are progressing. On the other hand, when you talk about learning outcomes, they are from the learner's point of view, learner centered, because outcomes reflect what is it that the student who is graduating from that class, what is it that they are able to show that they have learned? What is it that they are able to do at the end of the program? In terms of outcomes, we always say that these are learner centered. They are a result of what the teacher taught. And therefore, when we also talk about the comparison between objectives and outcomes, objectives are intended results. They are a result or a consequence of the instruction that has taken place in the classroom. What has been taught, what kind of activities have taken place, what kind of interaction took place in the classroom, what kind of learning resources were shared with the students, what kind of overall learning took place within the classroom. All that is part of the teacher's plan for imparting to the students. However, when we talk of objectives, these are achieved results. After all that the teacher did in the classroom, how did the learners fare at the end of the program? Were they able to provide adequate evidence to show that all the activities that took place in the classroom, all the learning that took place in the class was actually imbibed in themselves? So they are called achieved results. And when we say that there is a gap between, when the national education policy says that there is a gap between the achievement of learning outcomes, which I showed you in the previous slide, then it obviously means that the objectives with which the teacher went in and taught in the classroom were not adequately demonstrated as evidence at the end of the class. And this gap is what is the point of worry. It is a point of worry because a teacher makes adequate efforts to ensure that the class fares well, but the result is not commensurated. So that is something that is a point of great worry. I'm now moving from the concept of what outcomes are to the next stage, which is how is it that these outcomes are reflected in what is called qualification frameworks. And before I go on to the qualification frameworks, maybe I don't know whether this has already been taken up by somebody else in a session, but I will nevertheless run you through this whole thing, because when we are talking about qualification frameworks, we also first need to understand what is qualification. So I would also want a few quick responses as to what is a qualification. आपको क्या लगता है क्वालिफिकेशन क्या, किसको चीज को हम क्वालिफिकेशन कहते हैं? Some responses from you. What's the qualification? We use this word qualification ever so often in our day-to-day lives, in our day-to-day work.
Hello, ma'am. As per the higher education qualification framework, there are various levels of skill sets.
No, sir, I just want to know what is the qualification, not
Qualification,
framework, not-
actually, let me explain, ma'am. First, actually, there are certain levels of the skills. If a student achieve that skill, then we will say that student is qualified up to that level.
Okay,
Hello,
what you
ma'am.
are saying?
Good
Okay,
afternoon,
yes. Yes, sir.
ma'am. Qualification means actually we are trying to achieve something. Means actually we are our objective is to achieve something. Uh, we need to check some parameters. If the parameters are well enough, then we can say that it is qualified.
Yes, that is closer to what is a qualification, I think.
Levels of
I
education
would,
and credentials, ma'am.
I would also define qualification, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, qualification means whatever role and responsibility given to you, if you have skill for that is available or not, this is called qualification.
Okay.
Suppose you have responsibility to teach the student, and if you have good skill for that, this is called qualification. So,
Okay. Anyone else wants to add to this? So, then was the question, what is a qualification framework? Which I think was answered by Sir, right? The first person who spoke. They are talking about a qualification framework, I think. But my question was about what's the qualification, because we use it so ever so often. Is he qualified? Is it this, that? So we use it so much. Exactly what does it mean as a qualification? So it's a very simple thing. When we talk about qualification, it's very simple, but it's also very complex. Because when we are talking about a qualification, we are talking about those awards that you get. I'm a certificate holder. I'm a graduate. I'm a PhD. I've been awarded the PhD, and I'm a doctor because I've finished my MBBS. So, indeed, there are awards that are given. But what does this award actually mean? Award means that this award has been awarded, this qualification has been awarded by a competent body. Who is that competent body? It could be your university, it could be your technical institute, but it is a body that is giving you that award. And why is it giving you that award? Why that particular qualification is valid? Because that body which is giving you that award is doing so because you as a student have achieved the learning outcomes that were expected at that stage. What was that stage? The successful completion of that particular program. Therefore, when a student completes their PhD, completes their viva voce, and so on, that person is awarded the PhD degree. That is because that person has gone through the entire process of learning, has been able to defend their thesis, and the body that awards the person that diploma or certificate or graduate has been duly recognized to do this. See, I don't know how many of you are in my age group, but I know that in the early 80s, there was a lot of debate about क्या ये recognized है. Even when computers started at that time in the early 80s, so everybody said computer course करना है मगर कहाँ से करें, अरे ये तो recognized नहीं है, इसका करने से इतने पैसे ले रहे हैं but recognized नहीं है. So this word of being in recognition as well as ensuring that the body that is awarding you that qualification has been made the competent authority to impart that thing. That is equally important. And the fact is that we all have convocations. You will see that you have a convocation where your director will go up and say that this degree is being given, and that is happening because your university has been declared as competent by the UGC or by AICT or any other to impart those degrees and diplomas and so on. And for us in this session, it is important because this linkage to learning outcomes is very, very important. Just getting a degree or getting a qualification is implies that you have achieved the learning outcomes of that level. But as I showed you in my first slide, that the achievement is not really happening. The numbers who are entering and the numbers who are exiting with the awards, there's a huge big gap. Even in terms of on ground work that is being done, there is a gap. So that is why this word qualification बहुत ही भारी शब्द है, क्योंकि इस शब्द में वो सब चीजें निहित है कि आप क्वालिफाइड हो, डॉक्टर की क्वालिफिकेशन आपकी है, इंजीनियर की क्वालिफिकेशन आपकी है, ग्रेजुएट की क्वालिफिकेशन आपकी. इसलिए it puts a lot of onus upon us as teachers to make sure that that is there. Now let us come to frameworks. I think some of you are already aware of the frameworks, but I will still explain for the benefit of the entire group here what are frameworks. So what happened in 2020 जब नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति का जब निर्माण हुआ, तो ये माना गया that there was so many variations that were taking place: academic, engineering, medical, skilling, people who were skilled but had no qualification. बहुत सारे इस तरह से different groups थे. अब 2023 में एक सिंगल फ्रेमवर्क बनाया गया जिसे नेशनल क्रेडिट फ्रेमवर्क NCRF का नाम दिया गया है, और इस फ्रेमवर्क में 3 फ्रेमवर्क्स निहित हैं. ये है नेशनल स्किल्स क्वालिफिकेशन फ्रेमवर्क, नेशनल हायर एजुकेशन क्वालिफिकेशन फ्रेमवर्क और नेशनल करिकुलम फ्रेमवर्क. ये 3 फ्रेमवर्क इसलिए जरूरी है क्योंकि ये 3, आई होप एवरीबडी अंडरस्टैंड्स हिंदी. Is it okay? Because I'm switching, so I hope that there's no problem. So these 3 frameworks are important because they are in taking care of different aspects. And what are these different aspects? सबसे पहले तो अगर आप देखें नेशनल स्किल्स क्वालिफिकेशन फ्रेमवर्क, ऑब्वियसली वो स्किल्स, इट्स टेकिंग केयर ऑफ स्किल्स. दिस क्वालिफिकेशन फ्रेमवर्क हैज बीन प्रिपेयर्ड बाय द National Council of Vocational Education and Training, NCVT, which is the regulatory body for skill education in the country. And this framework and this body is under the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. जो दूसरा फ्रेमवर्क है नेशनल हायर एजुकेशन क्वालिफिकेशन फ्रेमवर्क, ये फ्रेमवर्क UGC, it is prepared by the UGC, and as you all know, UGC is under the Ministry of Education, and UGC deals with higher education in the country. National Curriculum Framework, NCF, is prepared by the NCERT, which is the academic body for school education in the country. And these 3 frameworks together make up the National Credit Framework. So if you see If you see this document, you can Google it, you can see it. It is available on the websites of UGC, NCVT, NCRT, Government of India, etc., etc. You can see this credit framework. And this credit framework is significant for our understanding because it is the coming together of a number of bodies, not just UGC, NCVT, or NCRT, but a number of bodies. So, therefore, if you look uh, at the logos which are on top of the document, you will see that the Department of Higher Education, Government of India, Ministry of Education has signed it, UGC has signed it, the All India Technical Body, which is Council Technical Councils, which is the regulatory body for MBAs and technical education. They have signed it. NCVT for skill education has signed it. NCRT signed it. CBSE has signed it. National Institute of Open Schooling, which is the open and distance learning education body for school education, signed. And very importantly, the DGT, which is which is under the Ministry of DG Training, which is under the Ministry of Employment, has also signed it. So, academic, skilling, technical education, employment have all come together and agreed that this is what the uh, education, training, employment, this is how they should all come together. So, therefore, this document is a very well written document, extremely simple to understand, but with a lot of care it has been prepared, and all these bodies are signatories so that nobody can say that we don't agree or your qualification is not recognized and so on. Now, why is this important to us when we're talking about learning outcomes and the curriculum frameworks? Because whether it is education, whether it is skilling, whether it is prior learning, whether it is any other kind of learning, they're all included in this framework. Why? Because this framework is now not based on grades, not based on marks, but it is based upon credits. And the credits, when you find that a program of skill development and a program of, let's say, physics have the same credits, then you can bring them together and include vocational courses, skilling courses, any other kind of courses, because they have a credit base which allows them to be part of the same basket of courses. It also ensures that there is an understanding between regulatory bodies related to movement from one course to the other or exiting with different types of degrees. So, in that sense, this national credit framework is a game changer for establishing equivalence between different types of programs and different levels of program offered under different regulatory bodies, all of whom have come together under the National Credit Framework. And why are we talking about this in a session on learning outcomes? Because when talking about learning outcomes, this document, which is the National Higher Education Qualification Framework Learning Outcome, this document states that at every level, let me just show you the levels first. This document says that at every level, there will be learning outcomes that will be prepared and accordingly evaluated. These levels are as such, which I'm sure somebody else also may have discussed these in your program, but I may be repeating it, so kindly forgive me. But under the National Credit Framework, NCRF, all the educational qualifications have been placed in different levels. So you have 8 levels which have been placed, out of which the first 4 levels, level 1, 2, 3, 4, have been allotted to school education, with level grade 4 being what is called presently the senior secondary or the class 12 examination. However, from level 4.5 onwards up till level 8 is the area of higher education. So, if a person is in first year undergraduate program, then that person, that student is at level 4.5. And if that person is studying PhD, then that student is at level 8, which is the highest level up to then. If you look, if you go back in time, then you will see that initially there were 10 levels made. However, these 10 levels, there were 10 levels initially made. But across the world, and let me tell you that this kind of qualification frameworks exist in most parts of the world, and therefore largely most countries have 8 levels, level 1 to 8. Some still do have 10 levels, but largely most of them are having 8 levels. So the Indian qualification frameworks have also been then made in the same, synced to the international levels, so that our graduates are placed at the same, are synced with the international requirements. You don't need transcripts and so on and so forth when you travel from one country to the other, because your system is now in the same framework as let's say UK or Europe or and so on. So in this sense, every level is important to for the for this. And coming back to the qualification framework, here you will see that the National Higher Education Qualification Framework says that one of its descriptors is having the generic learning outcome at each level. And therefore, when you read the National Higher Education Qualification Framework, you will see on page 15, the document says that there is a continuum of levels, and the qualifications are recognized according to these levels, and that every level is based upon a defined learning outcome. And what does a learning outcome mean? It means that upon the completion of this course of study, the learner will be able to do dash dash dash, or be able to understand XYZ. So here you are, as a part of the National Higher Education Qualification, the program is defining what all are the expectations against which the learner will be tested, because that is the yardstick for that particular level, whether it is in terms of knowledge, whether it is in terms of the skills at that level. And it is not just the National Higher Education Qualification Framework. The same thing applies to the National Skills Qualification Framework also, because the National Skills Qualification Framework also says that it also has the same 8 levels. Except that here, those 8 levels are, and the content of those levels is related to, of course, their theoretical knowledge, but also their practical skills, also maybe their internship or some of the skills that are required to be part of the skilling system. And but here too, if you are doing a set of courses, then depending upon the level, the learning outcomes have to be framed for that particular level. So, in whether it is the NSQF or the NHEQF, both of them have a graded system where one level builds upon the other. The learning outcomes of this level move on to a higher level. So from lower to higher, the learning outcomes are being built in a discipline or in a skill, depending on what is the why are these important? Why I'm talking about NHEQF and NSQF? Because here, when you are trying to have what the learning, the national education policy says, multidisciplinary education, education and skilling coming together, values coming together. So it is easier for the to establish equivalence based upon the learning outcomes and the levels that are there for that level. I hope I am able to convey this to you. And even when, for instance, when there is a development or design of the courses to be made for skilling, then you will see that, for instance, I'm giving you an example of the course of a skilling course, where a student maybe if, let's say level 4.5, if the skilling program is for level 4 or 4.5, so the NSQF level will be 4.5. What is it at that point of time that the person has to know in terms of the theoretical knowledge? What is it that they must know as a part of their technical knowledge at that, or technical skill at that level? What kind of attitude should they have? Because if you remember, as I told you in the earlier slide, knowledge, skills, and attitude is what the policy is talking about, not just knowledge. But if it's skills, it should be complement that. If it is an attitude, it should complement that. And then coming together to say that what is the broad learning outcome at this level? Responsibility here basically stands, this is a skilling program. So responsibility means the job role which a person will perform at that level. Here, naturally, the job role of a person at level 4.5 will be lower than that of a person or a job role of a course which is made at level 6.5 or 7. So, idea being that the outcomes are important because ultimately the demonstration or the evidence of a person being able to do what they were supposed to do through that course of learning is provided. So when we look at outcome based learning, it's not a new concept. It was made a long time ago. It is a holistic concept. It is a concept that looks at the entirety of a program, and it moves along a way where the entire system has to be revamped, it has to be redesigned. Just because person A is making a program which is outcome based, but there is nothing happening on the other side, whether it is in the examination branch or in the practical sessions or in the classroom, it doesn't work. It has to be a comprehensive whole system approach so that the results are visible throughout the learning process and the of a student. So here I'm showing you the NSQF outcome based learning, where everywhere this is taken from the NCVT, where every aspect of development of skilling is again related to outcome based because it is based upon whether it is competencies of a person, how they exit, how they enter, even prior learning, which till now had absolutely nothing to do. There was no space for a person who is a master crafts person to actually get a qualification. So there is space for recognition of prior learning also. And again, the thought that when a person earlier on, if you entered into a graduation program, but for any reason you had to exit out, so you were labeled a dropout or a failure or any such thing. But today, when a person who joins first year of BA and takes the examination but is unable to continue into the second year for any reason, that person will exit out with a certificate, which means that there is some qualification based upon the learning outcomes of that first year of the UG program. Supposing the person wants to come back into the system, then also that certificate will be valid and the person need not do the first year again or the level 4.5 again, but can resume their studies and enter at the next level. So, and as I said that, yes, this is related so that there is international equivalency in terms of the outcomes that the person has been able to achieve at that particular level. Any questions that you want to ask me, Kalika? Anybody wants to ask any questions? Okay. So, in terms of the levels, one of the things that we often talk about in education, and those of you who are from education will be well aware of what I'm talking about, is taxonomies, where again we are talking about the Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom was a American psychologist who framed this taxonomy, Benjamin Bloom. It's a very old one, which is at 1956, where Bloom said that learning takes place in a graded manner, where you move from easy to difficult. And that was also used to better understand and deliver programs so that there is a ladder which is available where you teach and learn from simple to complex, from easy to difficult. And these were the 6 levels of the taxonomy which were prepared by Benjamin Bloom. Subsequently, in 2001, there was one change which was made where the level create was added because it was felt that to be able to create something was the most difficult aspect of learning. And therefore, this is called as the either Anderson's taxonomy or the revised Bloom's taxonomy. And here, if you look at the taxonomy, the processes are such. Here, when we're talking about knowledge, we are not talking about, we're talking about only about the ability to be able to memorize or to recall, to be able to remember something, to be able to recall. But as you go above the taxonomy, then we are talking about slightly higher order levels of skills that develop. And therefore, you will see when we are talking about evaluation, which is the highest level, then it is the ability to be able to make a judgment, to be able to understand. So these kind of abilities are moving from simple to complex. Knowledge being the simplest and evaluation being the most difficult. There are similar taxonomies which are made for other domains like the psychomotor domain when you are talking about skilling and how you use that, but we are not going to go into that. the moot point that I'm making is that again, these are levels which are prepared from simple to complex. Just as when we talk about development of learning outcomes also, we talk from simple to complex and from easy to difficult. Also for values, also for the affective domain, this is also taxonomies that are prepared. How are these related to us in the area of designing and developing programs and courses? I think I won't. How much time do I have? I have, sir, till 4 o'clock or 3:30. So either way, we will come back to our learning outcomes. When we are talking about learning outcomes from the UGC point of view and the design and development of point of view, there is a document which has been framed, which is called the LOCF, Learning Outcomes Curriculum Framework. And this document, which I'm showing you, I'm showing you a page out of the document. This document basically says that when you look at the whole program, you can, based upon that, you design the program learning outcomes. But you also have to design course-wise learning outcomes. And if you look at the reverse way, then course-wise learning outcomes, when put together, make up the program learning outcomes. So you can either say program learning outcomes divided into them, reflected in course learning outcomes, or course learning outcomes make up the sum of the course learning outcomes is visible in the program learning outcomes. Yes, you don't have to have every single program learning outcome in every single course. They are spread across the courses, and the entire program has a smaller number of learning outcomes in that sense. So as I said, if a person is doing a particular course, a particular program, let's say you're doing a level 4.5 or you're doing a level 6 program, which is the completion of your of your 4-year graduate program, then the program learning outcomes will be the sum total of all the course outcomes that have taken place upon the completion of your course of study, your program of study. But the course learning outcomes are specific to that particular course that you are studying at that point of time. So, course learning outcomes, PLOs, what are POCOs? So these are what short forms are in that sense. So these are there. I'm giving you some examples of learning outcomes. For instance, if I want to develop a course, I'm making a small certificate course on social media. So if my learning outcome is that upon the completion of this course, a student will be able to do what? What is the first thing? I'm saying list 3 features of SWAYAM courses for higher engagement of learners. So here I'm talking about listing only. I'm not saying describe. I'm not saying no. I'm just saying just give me 1, 2, 3 which are there. On the other hand, when I say create a profile on Facebook, create, if you remember from the revised Bloom's taxonomy, is right on top. as I said, create is the most difficult thing to do. You can only do create when you know all the other, when you understand, when you apply, when you are able to analyze. So these are all lower level from lower to bottom. So this is a difficult learning outcome because you can only create something when the sum total of all the other levels of the taxonomy are known to you. In this sense, you can show or you can make your own course program and course learning outcomes yourself so that you are able to plan the teaching of your course better. Here's another one which could be for a history course, which says that list the main causes of the non-cooperation movement. List. They're not asking for any explanation, not asking for any description, only listing of 1, 2, 3, 4 listing of the courses. After the completion of this course, the student will be able to distinguish between Gandharva and Mathura School of Art. This basically means that the student has studied and understood the Gandharva School of Art and the Mathura School of Art, and now is going to compare the two of them and write out what are the different features of comparison and those that are of similarity. So this is a higher level of learning outcome. What do you think is, when we talk about analyze the reasons for the victory, how do you respond to this? Is it low or high? Are you able to see the PPT?
Yes, ma'am.
What do you think it is? High or low? Is it a higher order learning or a lower order?
High order learning, analyze.
Higher order learning. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. It is definitely a higher order because when we are talking about a learning outcome that is based upon that is related to analysis, as I told you, that you can only analyze when you understand, when you have that deeper knowledge of the subject that is being asked for. So in this sense, as teachers, at some point or the other, along with your other team of your discipline group, you may have to sit down and chalk out these learning outcomes so that it doesn't happen that you are teaching in such a way that you are teaching higher order things first and then lower order things. Let it move from simple to complex, from general to abstract. That is how it works. These are the other ways in which are there. But let us move to the last section of our of this section and see how we as teachers are able to ensure that in my slide at the beginning I said objectives, outcomes, measurement, and analysis, and then action. So let us see one of the simplest ways by which we are able to measure the learning outcomes, and I'm telling you about the simplest way to do it. When a curriculum is designed, you first make the objectives, the aims and objectives of the curriculum. And I told you that the objectives are of course from the teacher's point of view. Based upon the aims and the objectives, the selection of content is done. The, the transaction of the content in the classroom, set of learning experiences, and subsequently all these three come together when the evaluation takes place. The evaluation gives the teacher a chance to see whether the aims and objectives of the program were actually achieved or not. Remember, in my first slide, I showed you analysis, and then based upon the analysis, action, and action to go into improving the program. Okay, first couple of slides I showed you that. Learning organizational learning experiences can vary. You can say, I'm going to do a discussion in the class, I'm going to go on a trip, it's a history class, let's go and see what the artifacts of the Mathura School of Art actually look like. So let's travel to Mathura session. Every activity or every part of the curriculum that you teach must be related to the expected learning outcome. Because, as I told you earlier, what are objectives and what are outcomes? Objectives are expected learning outcomes. How am I going to achieve this? If you look at it from the outcome point of view, you will move through the content accordingly. Here's another one where it is related to outcome and content, and the SAQs are short answer questions or long answer questions that relate to the evaluation aspect of it. This is something, but the one way in which the measurement, or the simple way in which the measurement of the learning outcome is taking place, it is taking place through this whole area of evaluation. And evaluation, as of now, evaluation if we are talking about an examination at the end of the program examination, but let us just now concentrate on the question paper, which is the terminal examination, which takes place almost across the country in that way. When we talk about a question paper, it has to be something that is designed scientifically with a design. You also make a design. You make a blueprint, the architect, how do you put together that question paper? How do you assemble that question paper? How do you ensure that there is a reasonable marking scheme that is made, so that it's not just a one-way traffic where the teacher asks the questions, but what could be the expected answers also of that, and then a analysis which takes place. If you look at this design, it's a very simple design. I have made it only for the purpose of just for the purpose of explaining. If you have a design, before you even start putting the paper to pen or typing out your question paper or whatever, you need to just sit down and think, what am I going to make? Here is a program, which is a program of diploma in information security. Out of that, I made a design for one course. Remember, program learning outcomes, course learning outcomes. So this is only one course. What is the level? It's a PG diploma, which is basically level 5.5. How much time is the question paper? How many marks? If I use the Bloom's taxonomy as a department group, whichever way is simpler for you, I also need to think how many questions will I make? How many marks will those questions be so that they total up to that 50 marks? What kind of questions am I going to make? How many will be essay type? How many will be multiple choice objective type questions? How many marks am I going to give to all of them? Each of them. What could be the possible time in which this student is going to answer these questions? And when we look at a syllabi, then how much am I covering? Am I leaving out some sections completely? Or am I concentrating all the entire question paper only on one part of the syllabus of the content? In IGNOU, we have our courses are divided into blocks. Sometimes what happens is when the students look at the previous question papers and they say, oh, he just dumps that block and says, "Isse to pucha nahi jayega." So how do I divide my marks and so that the entire is entire syllabuses or the course is covered? Scheme of sections. Sometimes you have section A, B, C in a question paper. Do I have those A, B questions schemes or I don't have them? It is your decision. Sometimes what happens is you have different options which are given. From section 1, answer any 4 questions. And from section 2, answer any 2 questions. Or you might say, answer A or B from given below. So that is an internal choice, an internal option choice. And very importantly, the issue of difficulty level. I'm sure you must have seen visions when when the examinations are held, and you have hordes of students coming out, some holding their head, and some saying it was very difficult, or some saying the paper was too long, it was out of course, it was so. This type of a design is an answer to all and you and when you have learning outcomes and you have difficulty levels, so you know how much are you going to ask of analysis, how much are you going to ask of evaluation, how much will you ask of remembering, how much will you ask of recalling. A good paper, a good balanced paper is one that covers the entire syllabus in a balanced way. Also, which is not tilted students who are of a higher intelligence level, but caters to one. Difficult levels can be 50, can be 15 questions which are difficult, 50 which are average, and 35 which are easy. Depends upon you as a teacher how you want to design your question paper and how you want. It is also important that somewhere you make a marking scheme. It doesn't mean writing all the answers, but at least giving a guidance to what is expected. Because sometimes what happens is that evaluators mark the same question differently. Some may give high marks, some may give low marks, and therefore they are doing injustice to in both cases. So therefore, how you sort of visualize what kind of an answer will come would also help the the number of evaluators are different. And then lastly, and very importantly, I would suggest that as teachers do this kind of an exercise where you pick up 100 answer scripts of your course or your program and do an analysis to see whether the question paper was as per the specification should have been. How did the students respond to the questions? Which question was not answered by any of them or not completed by any of them? Were there students who were able to complete the paper or they left something? Was it balanced? Was the difficulty level too high? Because once you analyze your question answer script, you'll find that if majority of students have faced the same problem, it means that it's not their fault. There's something wrong in the question paper or in the teaching. As I showed you in my initial slide, once the results come out, you analyze them and you improve the program. How then do I go back into my classroom, find out that these are the difficult areas that learners were not able to answer? These were the learning outcomes which were not achieved, and improve the cycle in the next level of teaching, learning, assessment. It is this continuous way in which we keep on doing this and take responsibility for the fact that while the teachers responsible for the objectives, the performance of the learner, which is the outcome, is also a reflection upon where you need to make changes in your methods of teaching, maybe in your curriculum itself, and see how you can in every cycle ensure that the achievement of learning outcomes is of a higher level than the previous cycle. This is only one way by which we can measure learning outcomes, but there are different ways by which we can ensure that the intended results and the achieved results have the gap between the two, which, as I was pointed out by the National Examiner, that gap is reduced in every cycle that takes place of this process of teaching, learning, assessment. I'll stop here now because we have just a couple of moments left, and in case there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them and or respond to observations also.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
I am audible, ma'am.
Can I close? Can I stop sharing? Or yes, sir. Please.
Actually, I would like to ask a question, ma'am.
जी बोलिए.
Actually, in National Credit Framework, there are 3 framework.
जी.
One for vocational and one for primary education and one for higher education. And vocational education skill is integrated in both primary education and higher education. Hello.
जी, yes, you're right.
Then how will we integrate all these framework into a one thing?
सर, जो फ्रेमवर्क्स हैं उनके सबके लेवल्स हैं. जैसे मैंने आपको बताया 1 से 8 है लेवल.
नहीं, NSQF में 1 to 10 है.
नहीं सर, वो आप जो फ्रेमवर्क देख रहे हैं वो 2013 का फ्रेमवर्क है, जिसमें 1 से 10 है. जो अब फ्रेमवर्क है उसमें 1 से 8 है. जो जैसे मैंने आपको बताया, जो पहले फ्रेमवर्क बने थे वो 10 लेवल्स के बने हुए थे. अब सब कॉन्सिक्वेंट टू 2020
नहीं तो तीनों में लेवलिंग है मैम.
तीनों में सेम है. हाँ बिल्कुल.
एक्चुअली हायर एजुकेशन
तो
में
उनमें आपको क्वेश्चन क्या है?
मतलब हायर एजुकेशन में तो मैम ग्रेजुएट, अंडर ग्रेजुएट, ग्रेजुएट, पोस्ट ग्रेजुएट, पीएचडी ही होगा।
हाँ जी, हाँ
तो
जी, ठीक है, ठीक
हायर
है,
ही होगा, 4.5 to 8 ही होगा,
हाँ जी, करेक्ट।
लोअर वाला तो होगा नहीं।
नहीं, बिल्कुल नहीं होगा। तो आपका
लेकिन
क्वेश्चन, हाँ बिल्कुल ठीक है,
मेरा
मुझे
मेरा
सवाल नहीं
क्वेश्चन
समझ
क्या है,
आया।
इम्प्लीमेंटेशन प्रॉब्लम। एक्चुअली आई एम
कैसे?
प्रोफेसर एंड डीन स्कूल ऑफ कंप्यूटर एप्लीकेशंस।
बताइए।
तो करिकुलम डिजाइन में एनईपी कहता है कि यू हैव टू इंक्लूड वोकेशनल
हाँ जी, हाँ
कोर्सेज,
जी, हाँ जी,
देन मतलब इंक्लूड सर्टिफिकेशन कोर्सेज आल्सो, ठीक है,
करेक्ट जी,
देन मल्टीपल एग्जिट एंड मल्टीपल
ठीक है, ठीक है, ठीक है। सवाल क्या है सर आपका?
मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि सबका अलग तो नहीं होना चाहिए, ये एक तो यूनिफॉर्म लेवल होना चाहिए ना, 1 to 8।
सर सबका यूनिफॉर्म ही है। पहली बात तो सर 1 to 10 वाला फ्रेमवर्क नहीं इस्तेमाल हो रहा है अब, केवल 1 से 8 तक का फ्रेमवर्क है अब। और इसलिए अब जो है, इसको मैं आपको स्टॉप शेयर करती हूँ जिससे मैं देख सकूं आपको। तो अब सर ऐसा है कि सभी फ्रेमवर्क 1 से 8 तक हैं। 1 से 10 वाला फ्रेमवर्क अब रद्द कर दिया गया है, केवल 1 से 8 से। तो आप जो, अगर आप हायर एजुकेशन में है तो आप केवल 4.5 ऑनवर्ड्स करेंगे, आपको लेवल 1 2 3 4 से कोई लेना देना नहीं है,
ओके,
ठीक है ना? तो बट आपका सवाल मैं समझ नहीं पाई हूँ एक्चुअली।
नहीं सवाल मेरा ये है मैम
जी,
कि जैसे हम कहते हैं वोकेशनल ट्रेनिंग में कारपेंट्री को भी आप क्रेडिट
हाँ
देंगे,
ठीक है।
प्लम्बिंग को भी देंगे, तो क्या हम
अच्छा
उनको
सुनिए
क्या
सुनिए,
उनको हम
ठीक,
डिग्री दे पाएंगे, पोस्ट ग्रेजुएट डिग्री, अंडर ग्रेजुएट
देखिए,
डिग्री?
तो आपको, देखिए, आपको, अगर आप ये सोच रहे हैं कि उस आप लेवल 1 की वोकेशनल वहां पे करेंगे, मैं एक मिनट, अगर मैं देखती हूँ, अगर मेरे पास एक और है, जस्ट गिव मी, मैं आपको थोड़ा सा और दिखाने के लिए अगर मैं देती हूँ।
नहीं, ये मेरा डाउट है, मतलब मैं डाउट
आपको
क्लियर
सुनिए,
करना
जो
चाह रहा हूँ।
आपको उठाना है, जो भी आपको करना है, जैसे अगर आपको हायर एजुकेशन में आपको कुछ चीज देनी है तो आपको हायर एजुकेशन का ही उठाना है। आप ये नहीं कर सकते कि आप स्कूल लेवल के, आप सपोजिंग आप फर्स्ट ईयर का बना रहे हैं यानी कि 4.5 पे बना रहे हैं, तो आप लेवल 1 का स्किलिंग नहीं उठा सकते हैं,
मैम
आपको उठाना पड़ेगा
मेरी बात आप समझ
लेवल।
नहीं रही। जैसे कि 1 ईयर प्रोग्राम हो, कहता है किसी लड़के ने बीटेक में आफ्टर 1 ईयर एग्जिट ले लिया,
हाँ जी,
तो हमें सर्टिफिकेट देना पड़ेगा ना।
आप देना पड़ेगा,
आफ्टर 2 ईयर एग्जिट ले लिया तो हमें डिप्लोमा देना पड़ेगा।
डिप्लोमा देंगे
तो
आप,
हम तो
हाँ
उसको
बिल्कुल।
यूज करेंगे, वोकेशनल वाला को तो यूज करेंगे ही करेंगे, उसको कुछ तो दे रहे हैं।
नहीं, मुझे आपका सवाल नहीं समझ आया सर,
सवाल ये है कि
मतलब
अंडर
आपको
ग्रेजुएट,
कहाँ
मेरी
से
बात तो आप
प्रॉब्लम
सुनिए
आ
कि
रही है?
अंडर ग्रेजुएट जैसे आप 4.5 से एबव अंडर ग्रेजुएट है,
हाँ, ठीक है,
4.5 to 8 हायर एजुकेशन में आता है। लेकिन जो बीटेक
हाँ
में
जी,
फर्स्ट ईयर के बाद एग्जिट हो गया, वो तो
हाँ,
हायर एजुकेशन में नहीं आया ना,
हाँ।
उसे
नहीं,
तो हम
हायर
वन।
एजुकेशन, सुनिए सुनिए, जो जैसे अगर 4 ईयर डिप्लोमा है ना आपका, यूजी प्रोग्राम 4 साल का अब है,
हाँ,
तो हायर, चाहे वो फर्स्ट ईयर में हो, चाहे वो सेकेंड ईयर, थर्ड ईयर, वो दैट इज पार्ट ऑफ द हायर एजुकेशन कॉलम, नो, वो हायर एजुकेशन में ही है। तो तो वो हायर एजुकेशन में अगर वो फर्स्ट ईयर से भी निकलेगा बाहर,
हाँ,
तो वो उसको फर्स्ट ईयर का 4.5 का सर्टिफिकेट का की उपाधि मिलेगी।
नहीं 4.5 नहीं दे सकते ना मैम, वो आफ्टर
क्या?
यूजी 4.5 देंगे। अगर वो
हाँ,
1 ईयर में है
हाँ, तभी तो मैं
तो
आपको कह रही हूँ ना कि
आप
आप
उसको
उसको,
4.5 लेवल पे नहीं भेज सकते, इसीलिए तो उसको हम डिग्री नहीं दे रहे हैं ना, सर्टिफिकेट दे रहे हैं।
नहीं 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 सर, 4.5 एक, केवल 1 साल है 4.5। रुकिए, मैं आपको चार्ट, आपको मैं 4.5, उसको जो डिग्री मिलेगी ना सर, वो उसको 6 पे जाके मिलेगी। उसको 4.5 तो सिर्फ 1 साल है।
4.5 टू मैक्सिमम रेंज क्या है, 5.5 है या 6 है, 4.5 to 6?
एक मिनट सर, गिव मी 1 मोमेंट, लेट मी जस्ट सी, अगर मैं आपको फुल चार्ट अगर दिखा सकूं, जो अगर वो जो आपका स्केल है, वो पूरा का पूरा जो है आपको 4 साल में 4.5 1 साल है, सॉरी 4.5 5 5.5 6 6.5 6 तक आपका पूरा 4 साल का
मैम
प्रोग्राम
ये
है।
मुझे क्लियर करिए, डिप्लोमा हायर एजुकेशन में आएगा या किस में आएगा डिप्लोमा?
सर हायर एजुकेशन को भूल जाइए, आप हायर एजुकेशन किसको मान रहे
नहीं,
हैं?
ये जो फ्रेमवर्क बना है नेशनल हायर एजुकेशन क्वालिफिकेशन फ्रेमवर्क, वो तो
हाँ
4.5 से एबव ही है।
बिल्कुल।
लेकिन जो बच्चे आ रहे हैं बीटेक में, उनको हम सर्टिफिकेट डिप्लोमा भी अभी तक इम्प्लीमेंट नहीं हो रहा है। कुछ यूनिवर्सिटी इम्प्लीमेंट की हुई है कि
हाँ
आफ्टर 1 ईयर उनको सर्टिफिकेट दे दो, आफ्टर 2 ईयर डिप्लोमा दे दो,
हाँ
ठीक है, और वे
हाँ
आफ्टर 4 ईयर फिर उसको डिग्री
जी
देंगे।
हाँ
जो क्वालिफिकेशन है अवार्ड करेंगे डिग्री का, तब वो अंडर ग्रेजुएट होगा,
जी
ग्रेजुएटेड फ्रॉम दैट
ओके।
यूनिवर्सिटी।
सर सुनिए सर, इस पे जो उनका थिंकिंग ये है कि ऐसा हो सकता है कि कोई भी स्टूडेंट जो है वो किसी कारण से वो पूरा प्रोग्राम नहीं कर पाता। आपका अगर लेट्स से आपका इंजीनियरिंग का 4 साल का प्रोग्राम है, किन्हीं कारणों से वो नहीं कर पाते हैं, तो पहले क्या होता था कि वो अगर फर्स्ट ईयर के बाद आगे नहीं गए तो वो फेल माने जाते थे और कहा जाता था भाई यू आर आउट ऑफ द सिस्टम, ठीक है ना। अब ये कहा गया है कि अगर किसी कारणों से फर्स्ट ईयर का उन्होंने एग्जाम दिया स्टूडेंट ने और वो सिस्टम से बाहर निकल गए, तो उनको सर्टिफिकेट मिलेगा। सर्टिफिकेट की डिग्री मतलब आपको सर्टिफिकेट की उपाधि मिलेगी, मगर वो बीई या बीएससी या बीए नहीं होंगे। इसलिए दिया गया है क्योंकि जिस व्यक्ति ने 1 साल को पढ़ा है और उसने एग्जाम दिया है और वो खाली हाथ ना जाए, किन्हीं कारणों से वो बाहर निकलेगा। जैसे मैं आपको बताती हूँ, मेरा प्रोग्राम मास्टर्स इन डिस्टेंस एजुकेशन है और हम आज से नहीं, इस एनसीआरएफ से मतलब पिछले 40 साल से इग्नू, अगर स्टूडेंट जो है 2 साल का एमए में एडमिशन लेता है वो 4 साल में कंप्लीट कर सकता है। यदि वो 1 साल में निकल जाए, किन्हीं कारणों से नहीं कर पाए, लड़की है शादी हो गई नहीं कर पा रही है, लड़का है उसकी नौकरी लग गई वो नहीं कर पा रहा है, और any reason, so they can exit out after the first year and get a PG diploma in distance education. However, if they want to come back, फिर भी वो वापस आ सकते हैं because the credits will stay with them.
इट्स ट्रू, ये तो मेरे समझ में आ रहा है। मेरी
जी
प्रॉब्लम इम्प्लीमेंटेशन से रिलेटेड प्रॉब्लम है कि स्टूडेंट फर्स्ट ईयर में चला गया
हाँ
सर्टिफिकेट लेके, फिर वो किसी
हाँ
दूसरे फील्ड में चला गया, क्रेडिट अर्न कर लिया,
हाँ
क्रेडिट अर्न कर लिया, और उस लेवल की मान लीजिए 6 लेवल तक की क्रेडिट अर्न कर लिया,
हाँ
लेकिन वो अलग डोमेन में कर लिया क्योंकि अब तो स्पेसिफिक डोमेन नहीं है, आप जो है कुछ भी
नहीं,
लर्न कर
अलग
सकते
डोमेन
हो।
में तो नहीं कर सकता ना उसको, उसी
हाँ,
उसके क्रेडिट्स जिस सब, ये तो नहीं हो सकता ना सर कि आपने बीएससी में एडमिशन लिया और फिर आपने पहले साल में आप निकल गए और दूसरे साल में आप कहते कि आप मेरे को बीकॉम में एडमिशन दो।
नहीं, वही वो म्यूजिक में चला गया, म्यूजिक में जैसे आप कह रहे हो लर्न इंजीनियरिंग विद म्यूजिक,
नहीं नहीं सर,
तो
ऐसे
वो
नहीं,
उसका
ऐसे
इम्प्लीमेंटेशन प्रॉब्लम में है,
नहीं नहीं,
मतलब
ऐसे नहीं होगा। वो उसी जहां उसने जहां से वो बाहर निकले थे उसी में वो वापस अंदर जा सकते हैं। उनको उस चीज का, सपोजिंग उसने म्यूजिक में किया है तो पहले साल का उसको म्यूजिक का सर्टिफिकेट मिलेगा, वापसी में वो म्यूजिक में ही सेकंड ईयर में आएंगे। ये नहीं कि वो फिर वो फिजिक्स केमिस्ट्री में आ गए, ठीक है ना। दैट इज द डिसिप्लिन हैज टू रिमेन द सेम, दैट इज वेरी ऑब्वियस एंड
नहीं,
क्लियर
हम
आल्सो।
मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरी की बात कर रहे हैं तो फिर इसका मतलब मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरी इंटर डिसिप्लिनरी कैसे हो पाएगा? मतलब हम एनईपी की तो
सर
यही ब्यूटी
वो
है
तो
कि
आपके,
नाउ यू
वो तो आपके
कैन मतलब अर्न बोथ डिग्री, मैथमेटिक्स विद म्यूजिक एंड देन फिजिक्स विद अनदर डोमेन,
नहीं नहीं सर
इकोनॉमिक्स।
सुनिए, जब हम मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरी की बात कर रहे हैं तो जैसे फॉर इंस्टेंस आप अगर आपके क्रेडिट्स सेम है तो आप एक स्किल प्रोग्राम साथ में ले सकते हैं और उसी स्किल प्रोग्राम को आप खत्म भी कर सकते हैं। सपोजिंग आपने एक साल में वो स्किलिंग प्रोग्राम खत्म कर लिया तो आप उसको खत्म करके उसकी डिग्री, उसकी सर्टिफिकेट लेके बाहर निकल सकते हैं। But you can't make such a big khichdi as is being as you think might be.
नहीं मैम, इसमें मैं इसलिए कह रहा हूँ आप हायर अथॉरिटी है, थोड़ा सा इसको कैसे इम्प्लीमेंट होगा।
नहीं, हम हायर अथॉरिटी
नहीं, आप इग्नो में हो, ये बात
नहीं,
हमारे यहाँ
सर,
पहुंचाइए कि जैसे हम कहते हैं कि वो जाएगा, ड्रॉप आउट करके जाएगा तो कुछ और फील्ड में एक्सपर्टीज करेगा, और जो ये लेवल बनी हुई है ये डोमेन स्पेसिफिक नहीं बनी हुई है। एनालिटिकल स्किल, देन डिजाइनिंग
नहीं।
स्किल, और किसी भी डोमेन में
सर,
एनालिटिकल स्किल,
वो नहीं
डिजाइनिंग
सर।
स्किल।
सर सुनिए मेरी बात, जो लेवल्स हैं वो सिर्फ जेनरिक हैं।
हाँ, जेनरिक है।
उस लेवल पे आप नहीं, सुनिए, उस लेवल पे आप फॉर इंस्टेंस लेट्स से आपका एक यूजी प्रोग्राम है जिसमें आपका मेजर जो है वो हिस्ट्री है, ठीक है ना। आइडिया बीइंग दैट अगर किसी स्टूडेंट लेट्स से हिस्ट्री का मेजर लिया है तो वो स्किल प्रोग्राम ले सकते हैं, सोच सकते हैं कि हम ये लें कि हम टूरिज्म का या होटल रिलेटेड या इस तरह का एक स्किलिंग प्रोग्राम ले लें, जिससे कि उनके सब्जेक्ट के एसोसिएटेड एक स्किलिंग कोर्स से अगर वो बाहर निकलते हैं तो उनके पास एक तरह से एक स्किल की डिग्री या एक एक्सपर्टीज हो। ये आइडिया है इन सब चीजों का।
नहीं, जैसे हम कह रहे हैं एकेडमिक बैंक ऑफ क्रेडिट सिस्टम, एबीसी आ रहा है, एंड यू कैन अर्न क्रेडिट फ्रॉम एनी इंस्टीट्यूशन इन एनी डोमेन, then ultimately if you reached on level 6,
Yes.
then final degree of which domain?
Sir, no sir, levels are, please see, like I can tell you that जो आपका कोर्स है ये लेवल इज ओनली इंडिकेशन ऑफ, जैसे अगर मैं आपको कहती हूँ, जो अगर हम पुरानी चीज पे जाएं, हम कहते हैं जी हम बीए ऑनर्स केमिस्ट्री कर रहे हैं, ठीक है ना। दूसरा व्यक्ति जो है वो बीए ऑनर्स हिस्ट्री कर रहा है या इंग्लिश कर रहा है, तो वो अलग अलग वर्टिकल्स हैं। ये जो सीढ़ी है, बट बीए ऑनर्स तो कॉमन है ना सर, डिसिप्लिन अलग अलग होता है। तो उसी तरह से आप ये नहीं कह सकते कि मैं, क्योंकि मैंने बीए ऑनर्स किया है तो चलिए मैं एक कोर्स जो है हिस्ट्री का ले लूं, एक कोर्स केमिस्ट्री का ले लूं और मेरा बन गया। इतना भी मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरी नहीं होगा।
चलिए, थैंक यू मैम।
Okay. Any other questions that you would like to ask me very quickly? I think I have overshot my time.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
So I must leave.
Yes, ma'am.
Now,
thank you, ma'am.
I would like to.
Hello.
I'd like to thank. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. There will be
Yes,
50 minutes break now. We will reconnect at 3:45 p.m.
thank you
for
so
the
much.
next session. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am, for a nice session.
Okay,
ma'am.
thank you to all of you. Thank you. Thank you.
Am I audible?
Sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. We'll start. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining, sir. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the to day 6, the second technical session of the day. And this time, the topic of the session is alternate education through distance education. And our resource person is Professor Dr. Anjan Chakravarti, sir. It is our absolute privilege and honor to have sir with us. And let me take this opportunity to kindly introduce him to our audience present. Professor Anjan Chakravarti, sir, is Professor Director at the UGC Malviya Mission Teacher Training Center, University of North Bengal, a distinguished academician in economics. His areas of interest include development economics, agrarian Bengal, mountain economy, political economy, sustainable development, Northeast India, and gender studies. He has authored and edited several important books and has received multiple awards for academic leadership and social contribution. May I extend my heartiest gratitude to Sir for making time for us and sharing his wisdom with us. Thank you so much for being with us, sir. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Tanisha, madam. Thank you. I also express my thanks and gratitude to Ajit Kumar, sir, and also Professor Rajesh Dubey, sir. He's just like my elder brother and kind of a mentor also. I heartily welcome all the esteemed participants. It's a quite good number, 100 participants are there from various colleges, universities, I can assume. So let's, without much ado, let's start with this on NEP orientation and sensitization program. Though it is alternative to kind of a distance education that was precisely been given, but I will try to contain on a specific attributes of NEP, and in addition, what I'll try to do, I try to integrate all the 8 parameters on which the NEP is based on. So, how they are closely linked, how to design your curricula keeping NEP in mind, how the research and development can be reoriented. Third, and importantly, that the institution, some basic premises of an institution should or other must think on skill development in your knowledge system and try to incorporate it as a multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary approach. The prevailing concept that is mostly prevalent in most of the universities and colleges, especially after the introductions of NEP, you can draw a dividing line. Certain universities and colleges are telling there are certain flaws in the NEP. Certain institutions are telling no, it's fine. But my take on the whole issue is that we need to go deeper into the NEP to understand that it cannot be executed only by bringing certain cosmetic changes. Rather, we need to bring some structural and inherent changes, not only in curricula, not only in research, not only our pedagogy, teaching pedagogy, and importantly, to include the people of India in the journey of higher education in a manner so that a certain segment of our society who are excluded, even who got dropped out at the school level, how the changes can be brought in so that some silver lining can be created, not only for a segment for who are in a position to afford education, but move beyond that binary of affordability and non-affordability. Briefly or roughly, that is the objective of my argument. Now, the first question I would like to ask you, any of the esteemed participant can answer. If I ask you, what is the structure of your classroom? What I mean to say, that what is the type of students, their regional specificity, and other social variations, how much diversity exists in your classroom? Question number 1. Is it homogeneous, in a very absolute homogeneous in nature, or it is diversified in nature? That is the first question I would like to raise before you. Before that, I want to take a caveat that this is not that I am an expert on NEP, I know everything, and you are the esteemed participants have no knowledge on NEP. That's not the case. I have certain ideas and understanding on NEP. You have certain understanding on NEP. You are also executing the NEP. I am also part of that particular process. So this particular platform precisely will help us to understand each other, our institutional journey or institutional variation, the experiences that we will like to share, so that we can understand from each other our strengths, weaknesses, and how we can take up the NEP further. Now, having said so, one example I would like to give. So, anyone will answer for that matter. What is the classroom you confront every day? Be it in the virtual mode or be it in a classroom mode, whatever be. Because no longer the distinction between distance online educations and the regular education is got blurred. Even the physical specificity of an institution is also slowly getting diluted. What I mean to say that the type of teaching that now you can impart is something different. The way when we have been taught that the teacher used to come in the classroom, used chalk and duster or sometimes some diagrams or charts, etc., and some laboratory experimentation. Okay, we cannot rule out that laboratory experimentation cannot be done in virtual mode, but other than that, you can become a global teacher because no longer, because of the information and communication technology, the way it has been improved and it has been, I can say, the revolution in the information and communication technology that we are experiencing from last 1 decade. It's so phenomenal that being anywhere, you can teach or you can learn. So, therefore, whether I am locating at, say, for example, foothill of Darjeeling Hills or Siliguri, or you are located miles away from me, that's become immaterial. So, therefore, you can discuss the geographical boundary not only within the country but beyond the country. But the question that will arise that, okay, I can easily integrate to the global knowledge system, but the type of curricula I have framed, I have designed, whether there is a taker or not, that's precisely an important question, and therefore information and communication technology is some kind of, it's working as a conduit to the change that we are experiencing over time. Now, having said so, the question that I like to put forward, or rather the example I'd like to do, why there is a requirement of orientation and sensitization program. You may say, okay, sir, fine, fair enough, that okay, it has been in 2020, sorry. একটু লেকচারে আছি, অবস্থা থেকে শেষ হবে, তারপরে করি। হ্যাঁ, খুব briefly, এক second, just hold on. Just you give me a few seconds, an important call I have to receive. Just have a sorry, I'm extremely sorry. Now see that whenever a policy being announced, say this policy has been published in black and white, So you may say that, okay, I read it out the policy and implement it. So why there is almost more than 2 years we are carrying this orientation and sensitization program? The reason is that in India is such a diversified country, a particular policy, when it's being announced by government of India or central government, whosoever be in power, we understood, the government understand that, okay, it requires a certain time for the penetrations of the policy and to get a real outcome of a policy. Say, for example, I prefer to give an example for economic reforms. The economic reforms has been introduced in way back in 1991, and this is 2026. And many government assumed power at Delhi. None of them revert back the reform process. Rather, they took forward the reform process. So even maybe the week before, we will find some kind of announcement wherein this reform process is continuing. Similar is the case for the NEP also. That we understand that NEP has been introduced 5 years, 6 years back. But we understand that given the regional diversity, regional specificity, every 1 kilometer India changes. Be it language, be it your food, be it your dresses, be it your festivals, be it your way of life, be it the environment, the surrounding environment you are confronting, everything changes. So therefore, same policy, when it will be applicable throughout the country, we bound to have different kind of outcome. So this particular orientation and sensitization program will help us to understand that how we are actually taking care of this diversity and what is the outcome we are experiencing. So that is the primary object. Now, it is based on the 8 pillars. What I mean to say 8 pillars, it is Indian knowledge system, holistic and multidisciplinary education, academic leadership, governance and management, student diversity and inclusive education, research and development, higher education and society, information and communication technology, and skill development. On these 8 parameters, the NEP is based on. Another question, a very simple example I would like to put forward. Suppose you build up a house which is based on 8 pillars. That means that particular house is standing on 8 pillars. If you dismantle one particular pillar, what is going to happen to that particular house? The stability of that particular house, will it remain intact or the stability will be affected? The answer is very simple. The house become unstable. Similarly, the new education policy is based on 8 pillars, and each particular parameter is closely linked with other, or in other words, all these 8 parameters are very closely linked. You cannot approach NEP by addressing one particular parameter at a time. Rather, you have to correlate and combine and make some kind of synthesis among these 8 parameters. Then only we can understand, or the true essence of the NEP will be reflected. That is very important, and here lies the major challenge. Whether the framing the curricula, whether designing the curricula, whether designing the courses, whether introducing interdisciplinarity and multidisciplinarity, whether the type of research and development that you are actually looking for, that needs to be closely looked at. And precisely I try to do with my limited capacity, I will try to do that. Now, having said so, out of these 8 parameters, 3 parameters are completely new addition to the higher education ecosystem. Now, if I say ecosystem, it is a term we have taken out from the biological sciences. Surprisingly, the word development is also gradually moved from biological sciences to social sciences, because initially there was no word development which was associated to the way we understand development at present. It is some kind of process, synthesis process between Darwin theory and Hegelian concept of history, through which the word development gradually become part of society. I am not going detail into that. Just it's a touch and go kind of things. But three parameters are completely new addition to this NEP 2020. What are these three parameters? Can you tell me? Any one of you. You can say randomly. And let me make it clear. There is no ascending or descending order for these 8 parameters. You can take up any one at the first. Not necessarily so that it has to be put in this manner. Any kind of order or reordering you can do among these particular parameters. The reasons are simple, that all are correlated. So which you are putting first and which you are putting last, that is immaterial. But by the way, the question remains. The question is, what are the 3 parameters which are completely new addition to this particular new education policy? Please, I'll request the esteemed teachers to respond. Otherwise, I find that in online it's become some kind of monologue. So you do participate. And I know that you have a very vast knowledge of the issues, maybe more than me. What are the 3 parameters which are completely new additions to this particular policy? Now let me tell, Indian knowledge system, holistic and multidisciplinary education and skill development. These are the 3 parameters which are not part of higher education system prior to the introduction of NEP 2020. That means I am reiterating, repeating, Indian knowledge system, holistic and multidisciplinary education and skill development. Why these 3 parameters have been added and how we can utilize and look at them and bring changes, that is equally important. I will come to those points. Now there are certain backgrounds involved before for the introduction of NEP. Now basically what happened in 1991, that economic reforms was initiated in our country. Now when economic reforms introduced in our country, the primary objective was that we got integrated through trade and commerce across the globe. That means before that we were insulated. But that insulation has been taken away and we got integrated to the global economy. So broadly it can be defined in this way. Second and important aspect that emerged is that the government sector gradually starts squeezing or getting smaller. That means no longer governments remain with the production system. Government gradually withdrawn from the production system, and that particular space being offered to the private players, be it within the country, be it beyond the country. And as a consequence, the nature of job or the job market also faced a structural change. That earlier we understand that job means it's a government job. And private job means, okay, uncertainty, maybe the low paid kind of things. So we used to have a kind of reservations on the private job. But the whole scenario got changed. We find that students of IIT, students of IIM, students of technology, they are not only getting lucrative jobs within the country, but throughout the globe. That means the best brains, they find a global opportunity. And the second layers that came, or second wave, that many of the industries not only being created by the many private investors from our country, but from other country also. And certain type of works are being outsourced. So you might have that become a cliche, business process outsourcing, BPO and all. So that created another layers of job for the highly skilled or the people who have a good quality of skills. The third and important thing that we understand, that it happened roughly from 2010 onwards, that we used to consider our population as a bane. It's a cause. But we realize that we are the country having a very huge number of young population. So young population, we started considering it as a dividend. And we understood that if the large segment of the youths, a certain degree of knowledge and skill, if can be penetrated, it can be spread out, then new avenues would be created. And similarly, a lot of changes were taking place in the higher education system, slowly and gradually. So that means this NEP 2020 is actually an outcome of the economic reforms that not remain limited to the economic salon. Rather, it's also transcended to the various layers of the society. And now we have reached to an era where artificial intelligence and machine learning become a very kind of a short after things. But very important question, what is about the West? Now, West is the conditions of the Western countries is they do not have a young population. Their population cohort is completely different from us. We have some kind of a pyramidal structure. That means the young people are quite huge, but their population growth either becoming zero or negative. That means they do not have young population. If they do not have a young population, they cannot get highly skilled workers. So there's a scarcity of highly skilled workers. So what they negotiated? Initially they negotiated by using capital intensive technique, and now they are replacing the human minds. By mapping the human minds, they are creating artificial intelligence and machine learning so that they can further replace the requirement of that. So if the low population, low workforce is an obstacle for the Western country, we realize that that can become a dividend for us. And therefore, we need to bring structural changes in our education. And that is the whole idea behind the NEP. But without compromising certain inherent characteristics of our country. Because our country is diversified, our country is plural, our country is heterogeneous in all possible yardsticks. In no way, India as a nation can be compared with the nation of Europe. The nation of Europe is a homogeneous entity. We are a heterogeneous entity. So that's the background. That actually paved the way with certain, say for example, we understand that we need to increase our gross enrollment ratio to 50 to 60%. Presently, it is hovering around 38%. Therefore, we have introduced the lifelong learning, which was earlier part of a distance learning procedure. In our country, distance learning was created only to ensure the lifelong learning, and there might be interval in between. That means you may complete certain year of learning and maybe you can exit and come back. Now that flexibility is become part of our education system. Why is it so? That means a student can be treated at multiple layers. A student can be taken admission for 6-month certificate courses, diploma, or in a degree courses, or 4 years courses having a research content or training of research, so that directly he can enroll in the PhD program. Now this flexibility will help us to increase the enrollment ratio, because if there is no entry barrier based on age, there is no entry barrier based on your regional specificity. I can collect credit from one institution and move to other. If that kind of mobility can be added, then the education system will become very flexible. That is one of the intention to introduce free entry and exit, lifelong learning, which the UNESCO is propagating, which was earlier part of distance online education. Then it's become massive online education, MOOCs and Moodles. So these are the changes. So 2+1 system of undergraduate, we move to 1+1+1 system. Then we move to choice-based credit system. Then we move to semester system. Then we move to 4 years degree courses. And there is another intention. If the student want to become globally compatible, the year of schooling or year of education must be equivalent across the country. The student from India, after completing masters, they won't have to go abroad to start masters first and then get into the PhD program. So it can become comparable. So to integrate us with the global knowledge framework, that is also being added. And as I told you, that there are two sets of education provider. One is private player, another is government-aided education system. Now both coexist. And there is nothing to get apprehensive that why private players are there, why private colleges, why private universities. Let it be there. Let it come. That is not dilute the chances and possibilities of be it centrally funded institute or state-funded institute. Up till this, whatever I told, if you have any confusion, please tell me. Just I keep on telling at a straight. Actually, I try to integrate or try to acquaint ourselves that how that we generally call the word coping strategies. We need to build up a coping strategies. And that is different from institution to institution. Say, for example, those who are premier institutions like Delhi School of Economics, like Miranda House, like St. Stephen's College, or Jawaharlal Nehru University, or Calcutta University, or Jadavpur University, or Madras University, or Hyderabad University, or for that matter, many institutions, they are having inherent strength because their brand value is so strong. They have natural pulling forces. People across the country, they try to be student of those institutions. So therefore, they are having an inherent advantage. The institution located in a very premier urban joints, are having certain inherent advantages because a certain group of people you will get ready-made who can afford the education. But that's not the case for the whole India. So the vast rural population and institution located in the rural areas exist. So how will you reconcile? What kind of vision will create? How will envision so that some kind of silver lining can be created? Possibly that is the major area of concern or major area of our thinking. Now, I use two words, diversity and inclusion. Now, if it is a diversity, I can understand. Alternative to diversity is the homogeneous. Therefore, when I am entering into the classes or maybe in the online, I'll find that here all maybe from various parts of country, students are there. It's genders neutral classroom. That means there is a possibly equal percentage of male and female. That is a likely scenario. If it is not that, then we need to understand there is some kind of gender disparities exist. Similarly, from different income group people will be there. From different religion students will be there. From different caste group students will be there. Then that my classroom will in real sense are diversified. But if I find that maybe don't take it otherwise, say I am a Brahmin, say by birth I am Brahmin. So if I say that my classroom all Chakravartis, Banerjees and Chatterjees will be there, possibly I am the worst person, worst creature living on this earth or surviving. If I started thinking that way, rather I'll prefer my classroom would be like a different colors of flowers. It's a bouquet. Then it's ideal diversity. But the question arises about the inclusion. That if my classroom is diversified, that means I am addressing the issue of inclusion or inclusivity. If it is not the case, then somehow certain things are wrong. So therefore, to understand the inclusion, we need to understand the exclusion first. And it is a social issue. It is an economic issue. It is a cultural issue. It is an historical issue. We need to work on that. We need to think on that. We need to ponder over that. So if that be the case, I will go into that. But before that, I will take a small break, 2 minutes break, and I will come back. Hope you will not mind. Just within 2 minutes, I'll come back and I'll start again. I hope you are comfortable with that. So, esteemed participants, just I will take 2 minutes off and I'll come back. So, welcome back. So, now let us understand the type of exclusion that India as a country is confronting for a pretty long period of time. Or rather, we can say the best way to put it, that post-independent India till date is negotiated. And certainly, there are a lot of exclusion, type of exclusion has brought into control, but still exclusion exists. And one of the prominent exclusion that historically we confronted, that is gender-based exclusion. And you know that India, from late Vedic period till colonial period, almost initial period of the colonial period, the women, irrespective of the caste, whether they belong to upper caste or lower caste or tribes, they remain excluded from the knowledge system. To get the formal knowledge, So therefore, we inherited a country where women across the class and caste remains excluded. So the post-independent India today, even maybe the government is running a program or project, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, and you find that successive governments are bringing different kind of changes so that this gender disparity gradually get eroded. And certainly we brought, it's a success story. It's not a story of a failure. And there are a lot of cultural variables, economic variables, social variables, or issues or cleavages. Those are responsible for the type of discrimination that the women faced. And we commonly say that it is the dominance of the patriarchy that also become deterrent for that women to act on equal footing with men. That still that psyche was yet to be removed completely from the different Indian societies, I can say. But certainly, I'll say that the things have changed quite positively over time. But that remains. And if you take a different kind of jobs, different types of educations, you find the presence of girls still low. Even for a certain period of time, even in the army, women were not visible. But today they are leading. In civil aviation, the pilots, we do not think, never thought of that women can run. Now there is a huge presence. So there is a positive difference. The company, you find a lot of female CEOs, chief executive officers, and the top posts are being held. But besides, still the gender parity is a strong challenge, not only at the institutional level, not at the societal level, but as a country as a whole. That need to be thought of. So therefore, when you are thinking about your research and development, you might become out with plethora of research on gender disparities or gender discriminations and so on and so forth. But at the same time, your institution and your surroundings should be linked in such a manner that there should be some direct intervention. There should be some direct programs, be it sensitization based on your research, to motivate the girls, students, so that they can take up, instead of opting for dropout, instead of opting for early marriage and the subsequent problems the women face. That is also can be done, also can be thought of. So therefore, I'm designing a curricula, or there are now many institutions, they are teaching either women's studies or the gender studies. But the advocacy part, that means the syllabi might be divided into that. On the one hand, there would be research. On the other hand, there would be certain theoretical underpinning. But at the same time, how it can be implemented at the societal level, at your institution, surrounding your institutions, who are the girl students, which community they belong to, why they are not able to come out, what kind of support system they can be linked to it, and what kind of future they will be having. There is ample scope for thinking. Similarly, the pre-independent India also negotiated a huge caste-based exclusion. That means lower caste as well as the scheduled tribes who we call, they again also remain outside the knowledge system. Therefore, the so-called backwardness, we call it social backwardness, we are creating some positive. There are two words, one called positive discrimination, one group, other called that equity and equality. That concept comes. So, some kind of job reservations or support system for the lower caste category, because we understood they got historically deprived. So if they have to be at par, on a par, then some kind of equity concept need to be thought of. And equity, like caste-based inequality, has to be stopped, or rather certain kind of additional support mechanism is required. That is the independent India is also doing. And combining these two, that means initially if you go to the pre-independent India, it is the landed class. Who were the landed class? Mostly the upper class people, upper caste people. They were the landed class. Their sons and daughters got the privilege to not only get the higher educations but to go abroad, and they got most of the positive outcome of the knowledge system. And therefore, the dominance which you can say or the presence remain much more pronounced. But no longer this class-based division exists within the society very strongly or overtly, might be covertly exist. Or maybe the new asset holders, wealthy community emerged. So another class differentiation that has been created. For them, anything they can afford. So that also need to be looked at. And culmination of these actually creating an economic backwardness. That means certain group of people, maybe belonging to different caste group or upper caste even, they become economically challenged. Lot of historical events are involved. The partition of India, the exclusion or rather northeastern region remain excluded from the mainland India. Some fringe states, so-called princely states, they joined Indian Union much later. These are the historical issues. I'm not going to bring in detail here. So that means what I mean to say, that if your education has to be inclusive, then you have to bring those different kind of binaries. And that cannot be done alone by the government or through certain policies, but that requires a certain kind of intervention, direct collaboration with the society. We talk about the collaboration of the research institute. We talk about the collaboration with the industries, but we hardly talk about the collaboration with the society, especially the society where the excluded group, they are large in number. That is another social responsibility. Now let's come to the next slides. I think this slide is visible. Therefore, if I have to think about my institution, this triangle is my institution. And for that matter, every one institution just like a triangle. It's a physical existence of an institution. And there are three components: student and research scholars, governance, and teachers. You cannot exclude one component to have your institution going. So these 3 points are very important. And then a circle I have drawn touching upon these 3 points. That means your institution, my institutions, everyone institutions is actually encircled by the society. Now you can create different dots in this circle. These dots might be positive, these dots might be negative in nature. These dots might show the exclusion, these dots might show you the inclusion or the changes, positive changes that are taking place. So therefore, if I have to say that my institution for education is by the society, of the society, and for the society, then I need to look at myself. I got school education almost free. At 10 plus 2 level, I studied in a government school. I paid 5 rupees as a tuition fees. Out of that, I used to get maybe some kind of tiffin, maybe sweets, biscuits during the lunch break. Then I took admission in the undergraduate in a government-aided college. And there I paid tuition fees, most probably 18 rupees and 25 rupees in 3 years. Then I got admission in the masters. There I paid 45 rupees and 55 rupees. And then I did my PhD. Institutionally, I deposited 5,500 rupees. That may not be the case who was studying in the private institution. But private institutions, those who can afford, at least I can assume that 1/3 of the people of our country, they can afford it. Then what will happen to the 2/3 of the population? So therefore, when I look back, then I may say that my parents are the most crucial element who brought me here. Certainly, parents are next to God. It is the teachers who shaped me at different stages of my education. Certainly, they are also next to God. But who paid the money I paid and the money that's being spent on me? There's a huge difference. I spent much less. My parents paid much less. Who paid them? It is the all Indian taxpayers. Many of them didn't reach to the school. It's their contributions wherever today I am. So therefore, my basic responsibility is to pay back to the society. And this circle can be very small. That means you look at your neighbors of your institutions and see what situation are they in. And you can gradually become a global teacher. Your curricula become globally accepted curricula. You can contribute to the MOOCs. You can design courses through which the students can learn virtually even across the world. So we need to look from two ways. One is a circle which is just surrounded by institutions, the people, many of them, they are dropped out from the schools. Most of them, they didn't reach to the higher education. Even if they reach to the higher education by getting simple MA degree or graduation degree, hardly they can do anything. So therefore, education can be viewed from two perspectives. Education can be a public good, education can be a private good. So if education is a public good, that is government funded education system. What are the properties? Non-excludability, non-rivalness. Let me give you a simple example. If you are using a road, that road can be constructed by the central government, by the state government, by the municipality or the corporation or the panchayat. But while using that particular road, no discriminations are being applied. That those who are in fair complexion, they can move first. Those who have the most luxurious cars, they will go first. No, that kind of distinction doesn't exist. So therefore, that is non-excludability. And no one can force out one particular person from the road, accessing the road. So even a blind person with a health can walk through a road, walk through a lane. Or if he or she thinks that I am having the most luxurious car, I can drive it maybe 140 kilometers and run over the few people. No, okay, he will be landed up in a jail. That means whatever exists, it is a traffic law. So that means non-excludability and non-rivalness. Similarly, the entire government education or government sponsored education system is based on these two premises. But private education, which is private good, which is based on quality and efficiency, but for them profit is required. So therefore they will charge higher tuition fees and higher charges. But certainly they are also complementing to provide people with the required skill and knowledge. So therefore, both will exist, coexist. But the major challenges which the Indian knowledge system and skill development can do, or rather we need to think of, that is, there are two sets of knowledge exist. One is called formal knowledge system, another is called informal knowledge system. Let me spend few minutes on that. Now if I ask you, who invented fire? In which universities or laboratories fire was invented, or wheel was invented, or agricultural technique was invented, wheels were invented? We'll say, no, it's not invented in any universities or colleges or institutions. It's the general, it is the inquisitiveness of the society that made this revolutionary invention, which changed the entire course of society. Then what kind of knowledge it is? It is informal knowledge system. If you go to the Ajanta and Ellora, if you look at the painting, you must be wondering that what kind of painting, what kind of color is used. So you will be having no answer. If you look at any old monuments in our country, any part, some is 1,000 years old, some is maybe 2,000 years old, you must be wondering, who are those engineers? Who are those architects? Who have such kind of innovative minds and knowledge through which they have created that? Still, the puzzle cannot be resolved. You don't find existence of such institution where such kind of knowledges are being imparted. So this is informal knowledge system. Similarly, if you look at the other than the Western medicinal practices, rest of the medicinal practices is again including Ayurveda. It's a traditional knowledge. If you look all kind of crafts, handicrafts, artifacts, folk music of different areas, paintings, you find these are traditional knowledges and carried on through generations. They are not part of any formal training process. So therefore, when you talk about the skill, another example I would like to give you, that when you have any problem of your plumbing, you require a plumber, you require a mason, you require a carpenter, you require an electrician, or of that kind. The people or the person who came and resolve it. If you ask them, have you passed through industrial training institutions? The answer would be no. If you ask him how much you have studied, well, I dropped out at class 6 or 7 or 8. Now, how did you learn this? Simple. You tell that, okay, I just worked with a person having similar kind of activities and I learned and I have now running my own business. You count the numbers. These are all skills. These are all knowledges, but remain within the informal knowledge domain. Now you look at us. Have you ever attempted to create a curricula where our modern scientific knowledge, our biological knowledge, our knowledge on environment and sustainability, our knowledge on arts, crafts, aesthetics, music can be blended with this informal knowledge, and can we create a curricula? Certainly we can. Have we attempted? Possibly the answer would be partly no. So therefore, one might be linked with the Indian knowledge system, another might be linked with the skill. I prefer to give the example of two-person Gandhiji and Tagore. Now Tagore, let's first take the Gandhiji. He used to run a charkha at his courtyard, and Gujarat is kind of very rich in cotton. And his understanding is simple. His philosophy is simple, that there is enough to meet up our need, but there is not enough to meet up our greed. And his understanding is that India is a warm country by and large. Simple cotton clothes would be sufficient for us. But unfortunately, from late 70s, this cotton become mark of poverty. That means it is the poor people's attire. And now, in the maybe last 15-20 years, we are the same people reaching to Fab India, purchasing the cotton clothes or Khadi India, and we have seen it is 100% cotton and we are paying a premium price. So who was wrong? Gandhiji was wrong or we are wrong? Have we adopted that? We talk about entrepreneurship, we talk about startup, we talk about Viksit Bharat, we talk about Mudra loan and many more. But have we ever attempted to integrate with the formal knowledge system? If you take any of the handicrafts or maybe any kind of weaving, every region is having its own traditional attire and knowledge. If you provide them so-called fashion designing center, fashion institute of technology, or maybe your knowledge of engineering to have a kind of a loom, or if you can link with the global business chain value system, which is very easy at this moment, that a click of a mouse, a touch of a finger, you can procure anything. It can reach to your doorstep. Have you ever attempted that our commerce students, our business school students, our students of science, our students, students of language, literature, music, they all can be linked together and we can develop a course that will cater the requirement of the 2/3 of that left out population, and they will realize that there is something is there in that institution. If I learn, that will ensure a better livelihood. Unfortunately, we fail to create that kind of curriculum. I'm sorry to say. All the eggs we are putting into one particular basket, that is the technology basket. Let their technology, but are we blending up with this traditional community, people who are staying in the high altitude, people who are staying in the coastal areas, people who are staying in the forest areas or forest fringe areas, people who are staying close to the desert? You find that certain knowledge system exists, and that knowledge system is not only time tested, but that knowledge system is closely linked with a greater philosophy that we can survive without destroying the environment or the nature. Unfortunately, the type of way of life and structure we imbibed, we got complete disconnect we got completely disconnected with this natural way of life. So the concept of self-sustaining village, sister self-sustainable village, or the type of system Tega conceived in Sriniketan, where the crafts, knowledge from various parts of the world, as well as through cooperative from agriculture to handicrafts, leather technology, everything culminated together and being taught. Even we didn't add up that kind of model also. That means neither we have followed the post-colonial India, neither we followed Tega in essence, nor Gandhiji. We talked about Gandhiji's Ahimsa, which brought freedom to our country. But have you ever thought of that the entire West remains so brutal to the nature? And we also today become absolutely brutal to the nature? Had that concept of Ahimsa been practiced in our daily life, possibly the West would not have the opportunity to come out with a definition of sustainability, or today we are confronting global warming, climate change, and so on and so forth. Because our way of life was such that. Can we make a curriculum on that? That our Indian philosophy, Indian way of life, which is have a close linkages with the ideal definition of sustainability. Have we created curriculum? A number of institutions are offered. But in reality, have we practiced that? I don't think so. Even I personally, I don't do that. So, this is the way we need to reorient ourselves about skill, about our research. Let the global issues, you do the research. But at the same time, a very generic local issues need to be considered in your research. Then you have had data that the society that resides besides your institutions, how are they? In what situation they are confronting? What economic hardship they are going through? What barriers are being created that deter them to come to the institutions? Forget about the higher education. That will bring a quite tangible changes, and that cannot be done overnight. We need to work on our psychology also, because most of the teachers like me thought, okay, I assume something 53 years old, and then my job is secured, I will get my salary, I will get my pension. Why should I go some extra mile? So, more or less, I think I'm not going to detail, time is slowly ticking out. I come to the roughly, you can look at this. I just talked about this particular issue, that free entry and exit, mobility of the student and credit bank, I explained. So therefore, journey from sub-regional, regional to global education system. It's a two-way connectivity is required. It's not that the best students, they will go abroad and they will never come back. They will become green card holder. Or maybe when US visa, Trump announces there's a lot of hue and cry is created. Why should it be? Why can't we? If Singapore can become a global education system, global education hub, if China can become a global education hub, if the Australia can become a global education hub, even Thailand, certain institute, why we can't be? Because I am not referring MIT or Oxford or Cambridge. I'm referring from Global South. So with these, I'll conclude my lecture. Then what wrong with this global education philosophy? Now it was recently written, but it's almost become 2 years old. An editorial on a contrarian conservative British magazine critic entitled Death by Degrees. There it was written that academia, I'm quoting, quote, academia is now perfect place for the intellectually lazy, the arrogant and the cowardly to pass their years on as armchair activists. Maybe people like me would be considered like that. That okay, sitting in a air-conditioned room, this person is just simply challenging, criticizing, playing no role as such. Some American commentators, they strongly believe that computer coding classes should replace the foreign language requirement. And there is no better intellectual challenge than writing codes that teaches a machine to do exactly what we want. Now, for English theology and the philosopher John Henry Newman, the ideal university is a community of thinkers engaging in intellectual pursuit, not for any external purpose, but at the end itself. That means my objectivity cannot be individual growth, even though different kind of parameters, indices have been created to measure my efficiency. I am not against that. But it is unfortunate that in 2019, that UGC has to come out with a regulation which is called that it has become mandatory in your research methodology or PhD coursework, you need to study research and publication ethics. Why it should be? So therefore, Catherine Dew Gilpin, the first woman president of the Harvard University, says that university are meant to be a producers, not just knowledge, but also doubt. Why? Because doubt is mother of all the invention, doubt is mother of all the researches. Until and unless the doubt can be channelized in a logical thinking, in a scientific thinking, research cannot be accomplished. Maybe research papers can be published, projects can be done, but the research that really bring a tangible change to the society, possibly that will not be there. So to quote the Karl Popper, the famous philosopher of 20th century, that an open society demands an ethic of tolerance and intellectual modesty. Unfortunately, many of our institutions, they lack, especially the research fraternity, the intellectual modesty. A nation progresses to democratic debate and process of intellectual experimentation. When we talk about the democratic debate, then actually it is having two legs. One leg is the affirmation, another is called critique. Now, affirmation means, now it doesn't mean that whatever my apex say, whatever my superiors say, I'll accept it. If the system become of that kind, that whatever is coming at the institutional level apex, for my individual convenience, I'll keep on saying yes, 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 yes. Then the democratic structure within the institution will crumble and it will pave the way for the autocracy. Similarly, if I just become a critic, everything is bad. Everything shouldn't be think positively. Nothing is positive. It will lead to anarchy. We need to, when we talk about the governance, management, leadership, especially in the academic era, this has to be at the core among the students, among the teachers, and among all the stakeholders of an institution. Because anything is laid upon a very basic principle, that is thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. You cannot synthesize without having antithesis and thesis. So, I conclude by immortal Western classical musician Mozart. The music is not just on notes, but the silence in between. So we require need to understand the silence in between, because silence is also a language. Silence is also an art. Silence is also a science. So, therefore, I prefer to become silent now. Thank you very much. Now you can like have your own.
We will wait for the participants. If there is any question, they may raise now, or they may put it in the chat box. If there is any query or question. Probably they'll connect with you later, sir.
Yeah, daily attendance is the most important thing. Anyway, you give me a patience hearing. I really don't go by very modeled or structured way of kind of argument. My argument is bit random, bit my own thought. Maybe you can say that my own dream I share with you. So if you like it, it's good. If you completely dislike it, that is also equally welcome.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. In a day where we are forced by structure from all sides, it is very refreshing to hear from someone who is independent in thought and procedure. Thank you so much for giving us your time, sir. We have benefited immensely from this session, and I believe we will get back to you whenever and wherever we seek your help and guidance.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much
my
for being
pleasure and privilege, and I extremely thankful and grateful to all of you for spending such a huge 1.5 hours with me. Thank you very much. So bye. Have a good day.
Thank you so much, sir. With that, we come to the end of our day 6 FDP, and we will be meeting again tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Thank you, everyone. Please fill up the attendance and feedback link.